Hello! First one of the new year itself, I believe. Oh no, I put one that I scheduled earlier. Um, yeah, well, I've got a little bit to talk about today, and I've got something that might lead me away from animals. I'm surprising you. uh, Maybe. So I'll start with animals so that they are included. First of all, none of us, none of us at all need to consume animals, sentient beings, and fish. And I would say fish separately because so many of the general public see fish as not animals, even though they are. Um, we do not need them. We do not need them for ourselves, for our bodies, for any reason whatsoever. We do not need them. We certainly do not need to be harming or killing them, ever. Other than in survival situations, that's all. No, but right now, the whole of humanity could survive without consuming animals. We need to end animal farming. It is essential for our health, the environment, and animals themselves. We must not make the mistake that we've been making for centuries. We've got ourselves into a situation where a sizable majority of a few billion people who, for the most part, never see the wildlife in their areas. And even for people like myself who actually look out for wildlife and whatever, when we're looking, it is a rarity to actually see them. Now, back 50 odd years ago, seeing wildlife, particularly birds would have been constantly being seen at all times. Now, I see them every day still, but by no way in the numbers that were around 50 years ago. No way. It's a fraction. You could hear birds above traffic 50 years ago. You cannot now. Even in towns you would hear birds. In towns and cities it's rare to hear the birds, other than where you've got flocks in certain places. So for the vast majority of the public, they are totally devoid and ignorant of all, well, practically all animal species. The only information they get is if they watch wildlife programs. Now, yeah, fantastic. The wildlife programs are brilliant and everything like that. But the vast majority of the population do not even search out those programs to watch. Very small numbers of people that do care for the wild are the vast majority of people only ever watch those programs. It's the same as the idea of AI controlling us, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is not controlling us. People operating artificial intelligence are controlling us. And they're only marginally controlling us. They are not they're not fully specifically controlling us. Now, they could, if they were to pick, to find individuals that they wanted to manipulate, they probably could. And that would be the only way. But that's getting away from the issues of our disconnect from the natural world. And it's a massive disconnect. It's a massive disconnect of what is farmed, the amounts of animals that are farmed, the things that are done to animals, the destruction of the environment, the vast amounts of materials that are mined and quarried to make everything in our towns and cities. Those are vast amounts. But if you look at the mined and the quarried, that is insignificant, totally insignificant to the amount of land that is destroyed by farming animals. It's insignificant. You look, the quarries and the mines take up the space by far less than the actual towns and cities that are built up out of them. They are massive, they are very big, then they are massive destructors of the environment, but they do not destruct the environment on the scale of animal farming. I've said it before, you only have to wander outside your own town, village or wherever, and almost immediately you leave those places, the things that you're going to see are maybe a hedgerow, if that, but then a vast field. And the field system's been in operation for centuries. But we've actually factorized, even the fields are factorized now, because of even fields a few hundred years ago were at least more natural, because of weeds and other plants were able to still grow amongst the crops. Today, no other species of plants can ever grow amongst the crops other than the hardiest of individual plants that are rare, and if they were to become abundant would be targeted even more for destruction. Now, the plants themselves, for the most part, are farmed and cropped to feed the animals that we are then going to kill and eat. So, animal farming uses vast swathes of all our country. It's the reason we only have 13% of tree cover. 13% for the whole country of tree cover. Now it looks more, it seems to be a lot, because of 13% of the land is a massive area. We actually, with all our roads, towns, cities, villages, roads, rail networks, airports, everything, industrial sites, actually we only occupy just over 6% of all the land in Britain. So if you imagine all our towns and villages and cities and everything like that all over, and you often, whenever you go anywhere or through anywhere, you'll drive for quite a distance before you get to another thing. That is why tree cover looks to be more than it actually is, because it is just, all it is, tree cover is just double what the towns and the cities are. Towns, cities, villages. Now, certain areas of the country will have more tree cover, and other areas will have vastly more pure open farmland. Lincolnshire is probably the worst areas, as for the again, because of most of it is doesn't have many towns and villages. It can look better and greener, but the vast majority is actually fields and crops. That's a massive amount of land that we do not need to be using. Probably those areas would stay to be in use even if we've got rid of animal farming, because they are the better areas to grow foods. But they will not be better areas to grow foods if we farm the way we are doing so at present, because of the processes that are used, the way that farmers grow the crops now because of animal farming, means that there is almost no natural life on those fields. Soils are being degraded over and over again. It's the main, it's, in fact, the way that the crops have been done is the main reason that B12 is needed as a supplement. It's needed because B12 used to be on all those lands that are farmed. B12 has been one of the actual things that has basically been eliminated from most of those lands. The farming industry is a mess, and it's getting into a worse mess with the absolute growth of farming all over the world. We are constantly taking out wild areas. Forests are going, plains are going. There is even beginning to be growth of crops into hills and farms, into hills and mountains. There already has been in China. China has numerous very hilly, mountainous farms. We cannot go on farming animals, and we should not be farming animals. That should be the first thing in the world. It should be the first thing. No individual animal should be treated how we treat them at all. They should not even be imprisoned, and I will say imprisoned because they are. They should be free. And don't get that wrong. And the farm animals that exist now will not survive in the wild. They are not natural animals. They are animals. Just think of the pedigree dogs, the dogs that you know that have illnesses simply because they are bred. Well, that is exactly what farm animals are. They've been bred in exactly the same sort of way to be what we consider to be the best. They breed the farm animals to be what we consider the best for taste and whatever food, and actual quantities of that food. The breeds of dogs are bred to be what individuals or certain sets of people want of individual animals as their pet. We cannot we need to look at animals differently. Part of that separating us from the wild, from everywhere else, is also inclusive in the way that we treat animals as pets. We treat the pets that are large enough, generally the cats and the dogs, almost, well, or practically exactly the same as humans, not taking too much notice of the animal's actual needs. We will always, unless we don't like people, accommodate a human's interest, wants, and whatever. When you look at your pet, you do not know what they are wanting. You can have an idea of what they're wanting, and in almost most of the circumstances during the day, you will be far from doing what that animal with you is doing. You will not be doing what that animal wants you to do. And the animal has a right to ask you to do things for them, because you have brought them to you. They have not come to you, unless of course they're a cat that may have wandered to you. But the animals that come to you, that are in your house, the dog, the birds, the fish, they have not come to you. None of them have come to you. You have gone and got them and brought them to you. I realise the wrong that we do for pets long ago, before I became even vegetarian. And I noticed it when my own pet, not my pet, but our family pet dog that we had was, we're talking about 60 years ago, 50, 60 years ago. The conditions for dogs back then were what you would regard, what you would actually see as the actual farm animal conditions now. The conditions that farm animals in now is what our pet dog was in at that time. Possibly, well, not necessarily the worst, but yeah, very similar and as much the same. Chained up for most of the time, enclosed in a set area, and practically always outdoors in all weathers. When you know that situation and you can see that individual animal, and I was being sort of pushed to not realizing what I was eating, but yet could see an animal that I knew was in horrendous conditions, left alone for hours on end, almost no play for lots of the time. It was And it took me near another 15 years to actually understand that farm animals were going through similar sorts of things as to what our dog had gone through. And that's where part of my disconnect, even at that time, was, in that seeing that was happening, that even though it looked horrible to me, it looked absolutely horrendous. Yeah, it was so bad that if I had have had the actual conscience to know how real badly that was, I would have just released the dog at that time. I would have, because that was how horrendous that conditions were, and that's how horrendous those conditions are for farm animals right now. But we've got ourselves so disconnected from the wildlife and everything else. We're so disconnected, and part of that is our own individual pets, because of they offer us a barrier to thinking about what is done to animals to actually feed us. Because I think for some of us, we sort of comfort ourselves that we're looking after an individual animal, loving an individual animal, and sort of that way cushions us from thinking about what we actually really are doing to farm animals. And see that, and that combined with the majority of us rarely, if ever, seeing or knowing anything about the wild, and the wild circumstances of the animals. This is a mess of an explanation, but there are parts of it that that you would understand. I need to be clearer on it, and I will get to being clearer in future. There are so many things I want us to know, and I want you to find out. I want you to look into it. I want you to get that empathy for the animals. That is the first thing of all. If you ever get that empathy of actually understanding that whatever, say your pet, your dog, your cat, you know when you feel that animal, how it wants to be in comfort, it wants to get close to you, it wants to be warm, it wants to be so like ourselves, so much like ourselves. That is because of we always want that comfort. We always want to be there to get the comfort, and that's all they're doing. They're exactly the same, and every farm animal would do the same. If you had the chicken in your house, a pig or whatever, a cow even, each of those would do exactly the same as what your dog or cat does. Basically only different in the way of character, which is the same as your dog or cat, that will have a different character. For some dogs don't want to come close to you, others will always come close to you, and things like that. But every farm animal is exactly the same. So why would we treat them different to a cat or a dog in our own house? It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Humanity is unbelievable. And we are constantly making it worse. I'm going to stop here because of it's now getting longer than I wanted to actually say these things, but it's useful. much longer, and I know that, for very many of you, I will have lost many of you before this sort of thing, before you've got to this part. But for those who do get through to it, hiya. There's so many things I still want to say, and I will say them in future videos. But this is all for now. Thank you very much, and bye.